Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host Tony Cañas switching to my radio voice. And today I have with me Kevin Ring, who did not laugh at all at my joke. There we go, a little bit. Lead workcomp analyst at the Institute of Workcomp Professionals. Kevin, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
Oh, things are going well. Thanks so much for having me, Tony.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And it looks like on LinkedIn that you are in Asheville, North Carolina.
That is correct.
So October 17th, we're recording. So you're past the hottest summer on record, and it's probably beautiful now. You're like actual fall.
It's finally turned to fall here in Asheville. The locals are bracing for the peak of leaf season here in the mountains, and all the tourists to come see the leaves changing color. And we're excited that the weather's cooling down a little bit. And me personally, I'm ready for winter, even though I'm a baseball guy, which is a spring and summer thing. I do love the cool weather.
Awesome. And I've been to Raleigh, I've been to Charlotte, but I haven't been to Asheville. Is Asheville the one that's kind of like a hippie town?
Asheville certainly has a reputation for as a hippie town. It's most well known for being the home of the Biltmore House, which is the largest privately owned residence in the United States. It was constructed by one of Cornelius Vanderbilt's grandsons. There's about 4 acres under roof, and they put over 1 million people through the door every year. And I'm sure that that your audience are also big consumers of Hallmark movies. And there's a new Hallmark Christmas movie that's apparently coming out that was shot at the Biltmore. So that's been a big thing in the news recently.
Gotcha. So beautiful classic house. Mostly a museum nowadays, or some of the descendants still live there?
The family still owns it, but no one's lived there since the 1970s, I don't believe. It's it's 100% tourist attraction.
That sounds pretty cool. I visited Hearst Castle before, but have not done the Biltmore House, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so not too far. So we'll have to
that's
check
an
that out.
easy trip. And yes, if you've been to Hearst Castle, it's very, very different on the inside, but it's a similar kind of vibe. Someone who is wildly wealthy and built a house far larger than they had any business building, and it's a fantastic place to live. We're nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The climate is very mild, which is something that's always made it a popular destination. A lot of the first permanent settlers up here that started to grow the city actually came up from Charleston to escape the heat.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Thank you for the education. We always give the guest a chance to give the elevator pitch. What is the Institute of Workcomp Professionals?
The Institute trains, certifies, and mentors independent agents in a workers' comp process that helps them write more business and get better results for their clients. It starts with an education piece, the agents going through the Certified Work Comp Advisor designation program. We also have the Certified Work Comp Specialist for your back office CSRs or account managers, however folks happen to refer to them in their agency. And then after folks come through the program, we become their workers' comp help desk. So anytime folks have a question about anything workers' comp related, they come to us and we help them sort that out.
Okay, this is very exciting. This is very close to my heart. Most interviews we do are InsurTech interviews, and that's more because carrier people are hard to get on the show. But as you might notice from my LinkedIn, I am an insurance education fanatic. I really built my career on the institute's designations.
Sure.
I've never worked comp. I wrote some work comp, but I've never been so I was a middle market underwriter, and before that I was a farm underwriter, both of which I did a little bit of work comp, but not like heavy work comp. I have friends that do a lot of work comp, so I've definitely seen the CWAD
CWCA,
designation.
yeah.
CWCA, okay, CWCA. Yes, that makes sense. Certified work comp. So
Yeah.
I've definitely I accidentally put a capital on designation. Okay, so I've definitely seen the CWCA this designation, and uh, there we go. Okay, I had lost you for a second. I had lost you from my screen for a second. Okay, so I had definitely seen the designation, but I was not super aware. I knew that it wasn't the institutes because I speak institutes fluently. I kind of assumed that it wasn't the National Alliance because I've had them on the podcast and they didn't mention it. I didn't think it was Hermes, but I didn't know who it was. So glad that we ended up connecting. Okay,
Yes, you
awesome.
found us.
Perfect. So I feel like I completed my insurance education bingo card when it comes to having everybody on the podcast. Okay. So how long has it been around? Where did it come from?
So we started in October of 2001, which was kind of a tough time to start a business doing much of anything. And it was originally the brainchild of Preston Diamond, who's still our managing director, and another business partner that left us in 2008. And they were working together on another project, and the fellow that was with us at the time had an agency that only sold workers' compensation, which isn't something you see much anymore. But in
For real.
2001, with the market, it was incredibly hard. Rates were high, and that was something that some folks were doing. And Preston had a background in consulting and in some membership groups, and they had this idea to start the institute. And the foundational principle, which is still true today, is that workers' comp is the one type of insurance beyond all the others that a business owner can control what they pay without impacting the check the insurance company is going to write when they suffer a disaster. Right. So, and it also, with the exception of, maybe property or liability heavy risks, it's the second largest insurance check a business writes behind their benefits. And so with those two things in mind, the question becomes, why not lead with workers' comp? It directly impacts their people. And every good business owner is going to tell you that their people are the most important asset in their business. But our industry has taught both business owners and agents that comp is comp is comp, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just you write the check and kick the desk and move on with your life. And what we know is that if employers put the right processes in place, that they can have a tremendous impact on what they pay. And of course, there are a lot of external factors, the rate makers and the politicians and insurance companies and all of that. But when employers are doing the right thing, they can drive their cost as low as possible.
Now, I've had a conversation with different software providers that help dig into your mod. I'm assuming we're talking mod. I'm assuming we're talking basically how to make the business safer so that we can lower the mod. Bless you.
Sorry, I'm dealing with the remnants of a little cold.
Okay.
So
no
the mod is a fantastic report card, and that's really what it is, right? Because the mod is the combination of how your business is classified, your premium audit, which then gives you the payroll that goes with each class code on the mod, and then your injury management and injury prevention. And so when you look at an experience mod, there's a tremendous amount of information that you can glean just by looking at a mod without ever getting your hands on loss runs. But at the heart of it, it's a report card. And 1.0 is average. And that's true, in every state and for every industry. 1.0 is the average. And
Mm-hmm.
when we were in school, when I was in school in particular, I got a lot more average grades than my parents probably would have liked. And that meant I got C's on my report card. And one of the challenges that we face is that so many people on both sides of the industry have this very binary view of the mod, right? Above one bad and below one good. But the reality is that every business has a minimum experience mod, the lowest their particular mod can go, and that's got to be the goal, to get that A plus on your report card. Certainly, above one means that you're below average, and there are a lot of, not a lot. There aren't a lot of great tools. There are several really good experience mod analysis tools, and a good number of agents are using those. The challenge with experience mod analysis is not with the tools, because the tools are just giving you reports based on the information. The challenge is that so many agents feel that running a report and showing someone a graph that says, yeah, here, your mod's bad, that's the job. And for our money, the real job of the agent is to show them that report and say, your experience mod's bad. Here's why your experience mod is bad. And here are the steps that we can take together so that when we look at this in 2 or 3 or 4 years, it looks dramatically different. And certainly injury prevention and injury management is part of that. But there's also classifications and the premium audit, which are both huge issues and the vast majority of the time incorrect.
Why are they incorrect?
Well, I mean, let's start with classifications. And so I'll set aside a few states as I get into this. You got states like California, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, that just come off the top of my head, where the rating bureaus in those states are much more heavily involved in setting the classifications for businesses that go on their workers' comp policy. Pennsylvania in particular, you don't get a class code until the rating bureau comes out and inspects your business, and they say these are the codes that you go in. But in the vast majority of states, the way a business is classified is largely the result of a negotiation between the insurance company and the agent and the employer. And in outside of Pennsylvania and Delaware, there's between 550 and 600 different classifications that can be used. Very few agents know very much about the classification system, or even where to get the classifications outside of maybe Googling and hoping that the website they find has good information. And in order to make sure a business is properly classified, first you need to know what the business does. I mean, so if you think about manufacturing as a for instance, the correct classification may depend on what you're making. It may depend on what you're making it from. Are you making it from steel or aluminum, for instance? How are you making it? Is it hand machining? Are you using grinders and saws and those sorts of things? Or are you using precision computer controlled equipment? All of those things could potentially, depending on the risk, impact the classification. And then when it comes to the premium audit, most employers, their preparation for the premium audit is when they get the call from the receptionist that the premium auditors arrived, right? And someone from the accounting office draws the short straw, and they're the one that goes to work with the auditor. And even if the business is classified correctly, does each individual person in the business wind up in the correct class code? Does the auditor know who all the clerical employees are? Do they know who the executive officers are? Because those executive officers may have been excluded from the the policy if the state allows that. We generally don't think that's a good idea, but certainly if they chose to be excluded, we don't want to pay premium for coverage they didn't buy. There's well over a dozen different items of money or substitutes for money that employers may give employees that aren't supposed to count on their premium audit. But if all the employer shows up with is a report from their payroll system that has, everyone's gross payroll and that matches with their state unemployment tax return, well, the auditor is going to take those numbers. And if you didn't do something like break out overtime, break out severance pay that you paid people during the policy period, or expense reimbursements is another very common thing that should be excluded. If the employer doesn't have those records together, then the default is that you pay premium on the payroll unless you can show that it should be excluded. And so we very strongly believe that 75% or more of premium audits are incorrect, and that comes from our now 22 years of experience working with agents, as well as a premium auditor that we used to work with. But and I was never more confident of that number than probably 6 or 7 years ago. I was asked to speak in front of a group of premium auditors at a premium auditor convention. And I was in a hotel meeting room. We've all been in these rooms. The only exit from the room was behind the audience. And I stood in front of them and I said, 75% or more of premium audits are incorrect. And I wasn't sure if there was going to be pitchforks and torches. They were just going to come, running to the front of the room. But I got, unanimous nods of approval and agreement, because I followed that up with, most of the time, those mistakes are the result of an employer not keeping the proper records so that their audit can be done correctly. Even auditors would admit that they make mistakes. They're humans like the rest of us. But when we say the audit is wrong 75% or more of the time, it's not that there's a mistake 75%, at least not on the auditor's part. The mistake is in the employer not keeping the right records, which is almost always the result of them not knowing any better, right? No one's ever told
Makes
them.
sense.
And so many agents, and I'm sure that this doesn't describe anyone that listens to your podcast, but so many agents will spend so much time working to convince a business owner that they're the best fit, that whoever they're working with now, isn't good. We all know not to aggressively throw someone under the bus, but ultimately, that's what selling is convincing people that you're the better fit. And then at the end of the conversation, they say, okay, great. Can I have a copy of your deck sheets? And then they just copy down what's already there. And I compare that to cheating off the test of the person fails every time. It's like if you're convincing them that their incumbent agent should be replaced by you, then why are you just copying their work and sending that to the underwriter?
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do the designations work? Are they in-person classes? Are they live classes? Are they read the book and take the test? What is it like?
It's never read the book and take the test. I wouldn't want to write the book, and you wouldn't want to read it. So there's 3 different ways that folks can consume the Certified Work Comp Advisor class. There is an on-demand version of the class, and it's about 12 hours front to back, over 12 modules. 11 of those are video, and one of them is audio only. We've done everything we can with those videos to replicate what you would hear in a live workshop. The big difference is if you raise your hand, the video is not going to stop and ask you what your question is. We also teach it live over Zoom, and then also occasionally in person, but really just occasionally. People have gotten so accustomed now to doing classes remotely, and we very intentionally work with a small group of agents. we work, I'd have to go back and look, but with somewhere between 200 and 225 agencies around the country. So you mentioned some of those other companies that have really good designation programs. They have, tens of thousands or more, people who hold their designation. So it's a little bit easier to get, 20 or 30 people in a room. But since
Mm-hmm.
COVID, we've been doing it over Zoom, and it's probably about 90%, I would say, as good as in person. The big thing I think people miss not going to live events isn't the content, it's the breaks, right? It's the fact that at 5 o'clock or whatever time the class ends, that people aren't like, hey, do you want to go grab a drink or have dinner? It's missing that networking piece.
Yep, absolutely makes sense. You haven't mentioned, so I see on your website the MWCA.
Yeah, the Master Work
Uh,
Comp Advisor is a next level designation for folks that have either the Certified Work Comp Advisor or Certified Work Comp Specialist. And in the Masters, we go deeper into everything that we talk about in the Certified Work Comp Advisor. But when we go deeper, to start with kind of how they differentiate from each other, the Certified Work Comp Advisor, we did one a few weeks ago. And in that class, we had someone from California, we had someone else from Pennsylvania, we had 6 or 7 people from NCCI states. Obviously, there are differences in each of those. Pennsylvania and California have separate rating bureaus and completely different experience mod calculations than NCCI. But ultimately, the process is the process. Every state has their little quirks, but the process of having a successful workers' comp program is pretty much the same everywhere. In the Masters, we do break it down by rating bureau because we're getting really, really deep into the rating bureau manuals, talking about how classifications are written. Thinking about something like code 9015, which is for building maintenance, and how if you're a building, if you're a property manager and you provide janitorial services on a property that you manage, then any maintenance or repair that you do on that building, say replacing a toilet or something like that, that goes into code 9015. Whereas if you have a property you manage where you don't provide janitorial services, that maintenance and repair work has to go into the appropriate construction code. Digging into the experience mod all the way down to calculating the impact of a claim on the mod by hand, which is not something that we recommend people do. There's software that can do that faster and more accurately. But what it allows folks to do is really learn how the numbers move on the experience mod, which then helps them explain it more simply to a business owner. And when a business owner says, hey, why did this $25,000 claim make my mod jump 25 points? Well, now, because you know how the math works, you can explain that even if you're not, showing them how to do the math, right in front of them. And so that's for the folks that want to get a little bit nerdy with, a little bit more nerdy with workers' comp.
Fantastic. How much do the programs cost? And we're recording late 2023, so for the listeners, if you're listening to this in 2025, it probably costs different. But
yeah, so we're a membership organization, and typically the agency will join. We do occasionally have someone that for whatever reason the agency owner isn't into it or whatever, individuals can join. But membership for an agency is $550 per month. If we have anyone listening who happens to work in a location of a larger national or regional agency, that's going to cover the your office, up to 10 producers in the agency. We've certainly worked out deals with agencies larger than that, but most of our members have somewhere between 3 and 10 producers, I would say, and so that's the pricing for them. Um, and then when you do a live class, there's an additional tuition fee. The live courses, the on-demand course is not approved for continuing ed, but the live versions of the certified work comp advisor, whether on Zoom or in person, are approved for CE, I think, in 36 or 37 states
Yeah.
now.
Are there CE requirements for your designations, or just for my license kind of thing?
Well, the CE that I'm talking about there is for your license, and it's just kind of a nice add-on to kill two birds with one stone. The designations that we bestow, I hate that word. It sounds a little pretentious, but so when you earn the designation's good for 3 years. There's multiple different ways to refresh that. You can attend the workshop again, which is often a good thing to do. At least after a couple 3 years after your first time through, you've had time to put it on the ground, and now you're probably going to hear some different things. We have a national event we call our symposium, which is kind of our national convention for our community. When we have those, that would refresh your designation. We also, as part of, I said we become their workers' comp help desk. We also have a member website that has a couple hundred different resources for folks to use. And we do a dozen plus webinars a year. So we do those live, and we also archive those on our website. And when folks attend those, if they attend 15 webinars live or recorded during the 3 years, then they can extend their designation that way. And it works in very similar to CE, but we call it institute credits to avoid confusing the two.
Yes, thank you for not confusing. uh, the institutes does this in a very confusing way, and for a long time they didn't have CE credits for CPCU. Now they do, and it's just messy because they do call them CE, right? And I'm lucky I don't have a license, but yes, it is messy. So thank you for not calling it that. The conference, when is that? Is that spring? Is that fall? Is it always in North Carolina? Does it vary?
So we don't currently have one on the calendar. We had our first one since COVID back in March. And I'm targeting doing our next one in 2025. 2023 has been a bit of a chaotic year. We've done them all over the country. We've in the past we've done a couple in Laguna Beach, California. We've done them in San Antonio, in Chicago. We have had a good number of them in North Carolina, where well, as the one person in the business that's a North Carolina native, I'm very proud of North Carolina. We had one in Annapolis back in the day. I'm suspecting that the next one will be more Central Time, but not quite sure when. I prefer the spring. The fall is always a challenge because it feels like every single insurance group in the country has their conference in the fall, whether it's the agency management systems or the state associations.
Yes.
Everybody
At the
puts it in
same
late
time,
summer.
too.
Yeah, it makes it
Yes,
a real
it,
challenge.
it's the bane of my existence. I do like 30 to 40 conferences a
Oh my
year,
goodness.
and yes, I spend like 2 months on the road, both in fall and in spring. It just so right now I'm in between CPCU and Applied Net, so I have a week off. But yeah, all right. I'm always curious. Uh, do you guys have any stats on how the producers that have the designation do better than the ones that don't?
We don't, and that would be difficult to probably put together. What what we do know is that, over the course of a couple of decades, the folks that have put what we do into action inevitably see results. It's a sad fact that you don't have to be very good at selling insurance to make a good living in our business, especially if you pick the right marketplace. I don't know if you know David Carruthers, but I heard him speak a while ago, and he said, like, his first mentor in the industry said, this industry is full of C players, and if you can just be a B player, you're going to make a really good living. And I think that's
Carruthers is an absolute A player.
Yeah.
And trainer of A players.
And I think that's very
that's
true.
fantastic.
And what we try and do is help our folks be, A players when it comes to workers' comp, and then rely on their resourcefulness to learn the other pieces of it. The other thing that I would say about that question, and I think for your listeners in the agencies, this is something that they might want to think really hard about, is that our industry, and I'm going back not just since we've been doing this, but even if you talk to people Preston's age, and Preston started selling insurance in 1957, so it's been a minute. This industry has a habit of taking someone that's completely new and trying to give them a PhD in insurance as quickly as possible, right? You send them to a 6-week company school. You try and teach them all of these things, and that's really not how humans learn, right? Humans learn through, you give them some knowledge, and then you let them gain experience to apply that knowledge, and then they really know something, as opposed to just having these abstract things. And what we've seen tremendous success with is our agencies that have hired new producers and said, go learn workers' comp. And they team sell as they start for the, however long, it's probably, a couple, 3 years, where they'll generate leads using workers' comp. They'll have the sales appointment on workers' comp. And then they'll say, let me bring my colleague, Sally, to talk with you about the rest of your account. It allows producers to validate more quickly. It lessens the E&O risk because, for all the complexity inside of workers' comp, that complexity is not in the policy, right? No one's ever walking in to a risk and finding out that they're underinsured $5 million on their workers' comp, because the policy is mandatory, it doesn't matter who you buy your workers' comp from. If someone falls off a ladder, they're getting the same benefits because they fell off that ladder. And then let the producer add to their knowledge incrementally, rather than saying, here, learn all of this, and then, go, sell to whoever you can find to sell to. And then, we'll talk in 12 or 24 months about whether you've sold enough to stick around. And when you can help a producer build into the industry that way, and it does go against this kind of lone wolf model that our industry is built on, but it sets up a much stronger foundation for success for that producer.
Yep, I agreed. I agreed completely. I think the only thing we haven't really talked about kind of in depth is so once my agency is a partner or a member, once my agency is a member, you become our work comp help desk.
Yes.
So what exactly does that mean? What kind of questions can you help me with?
So it starts with me borderline harassing folks to send me mod worksheets and loss runs for us to go over together. And I'm not in my office, but I think I've got about 1,230 worksheets in my stack that I've collected over the last decade or so since I've been keeping track. And we work through that together. Most of the time, people send me prospective clients. Sometimes it's current clients with, hey, this happened to the mod and I don't really understand why. But there's two parts or two goals to those conversations. The first is what questions are in this information? You know that asking the right questions is often more important than knowing the right answers when it comes to advancing the sale. When you can ask someone a question that no one's ever been asked before, they immediately assume you know the answer and that you must know something that the incumbent doesn't know. It's also the best way we've found to help people take what they learn in the course and start to apply it in the real world. Beyond that, we get questions every day with, yesterday afternoon, it was, hey, I'm working on this new account. This is what they do. What class codes do you think work here? The premium audit didn't come back the way that we expected. Can you help me, figure out why and how to make the argument that it's wrong if we decide that it's wrong? This injured employee isn't behaving the way that we would hope. What steps can an employer take? And I will on that point mention that a lot of times the answer to what steps can the employer take involves me saying you need to talk to an attorney, because a lot of times the question that's actually asked is, this injured employee won't come back to work, we want to fire him, can we do that? And then, that's not for me to answer. You need to talk to an attorney before you start firing people. A lot of questions about experience mods. If something's been reported incorrectly, or you'll occasionally see experience mods with incorrect payroll, and a lot of times that happens because either the audit happens late or it didn't get put into the insurance company's system in a timely manner. What I like to tell people is that if it's comp or comp adjacent, if we don't know the answers, we know the people that do. And that's part of the power of the community that we've built. One of the questions that we sometimes get is, hey, do you know a market that likes X industry? And we don't, not generally do we have a good answer to that question, because insurance companies and their appetites are not something that we spend a lot of time with. However, from our relationships with our clients, I do happen to know that, this agent that we work with does a lot of work in that industry. So then I can, hook those two people up to have a conversation. Or, hey, I'm in New Mexico and my client is opening an operation in Tennessee. I'm not licensed in Tennessee. Can you introduce me to someone that might be able to broker the business? Those sorts of connections we help make quite often.
So if it has to do with work comp, you can probably help.
We can certainly, at the very least, we can connect you to someone that can help. But for the vast majority of questions, we're going to have resources internally that can get you the answer to those questions. And sometimes, I got an email this morning from an agent in Virginia that was having a hard time finding the officer minimums and maximums for North Carolina because they're not published on the NCCI website. And I knew where to dig around on the North Carolina Rating Bureau website and find that information so that they were ready for their client's premium audit that's coming up.
Perfect. We've talked like 99% agency. As a former carrier guy, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. So for any carrier professionals that call me for career advice, let's say work comp underwriters, work comp adjusters, they want to learn more about work comp, which of the designations would you recommend? It sounds like they're made for agents, but which one is a good fit for carrier people?
The designations are built for agents, and and they're not available outside of the membership that we talked about. So if you were to go to our website, and we'll get this question from time to time, hey, I went to your website and I want to sign up, but I couldn't find a buy now button. Well, that's because you can't just buy now. So this year in 2023, we launched a new program just for employers. And one of my first projects for 2024 is building a program for folks inside of insurance companies. We did a bespoke program for a regional insurance company that we happened to get acquainted with early in 2023 that kind of sparked the idea of something that is a little bit more technical than what we teach in the Certified Work Comp Advisor. And I'll tell you, I would love any feedback that any listeners at the company level would want to share, because there's some real challenges that we think about when we think about building something for the carrier side. And the first is who to communicate with, right? It's, when you're talking about training inside of a large organization, which most insurance companies are, I'm not entirely sure how many people, go out of pocket for personal training, or if they have some sort of, personal budget, right? So the question that occurs to us when we think about marketing anything we might build is, who are the people that we would reach out to say, hey, this is something you could offer to your people. Secondly, is that insurance companies, in a lot of cases, are very heavily siloed. So the claims adjusters adjust claims, and that's what they know, and that's what they do, and they have very little really knowledge of the impact that their work has outside of that injured employee, right? They know very much the importance of doing everything they can to make sure that injured employee gets the benefits they are owed and get that person back to work. But do they know that closing a claim today versus closing it 2 weeks from now, could be the difference between that claim showing up at $37,000 on the mod versus $60,000. And the same thing with premium auditors. They know the premium audit, but they don't know a lot about the other pieces, and underwriters are maybe a little cross-trained in the two things. But when we put together this program that I was talking about, it was all of those folks were in the training, and so I'm sure that when we talked a little bit about injury management, the claims adjusters were going, oh, this is boring. I already know stuff about managing claims, but it was trying to be a holistic view of comp for the entire organization. So my goal is to get that out on the street in the second quarter of 24. And then the end of the answer to that question is that if someone from an insurance company hears this and thinks, man, I really wish my team knew more about what Kevin's talking about, don't hesitate to reach out, because we could talk about putting something together just for your team, and we can figure out how that would be presented, and we're not going to pitch you on some multi-$100,000 deal to train your team. It would certainly not be an exorbitant cost to make that happen. So we'd be 100% open to that conversation before and after we launch that new program next year.
Fantastic. Welcome to come on the podcast once that's gone live to talk about it. If I had to, well, the stats say that our listenership is 50-50 carrier versus broker. I come from the carrier space, so I always tend to assume that a lot of people are carrier. But yeah, I would definitely love to have you back once that program is out to talk about it. Thank you very much for your time. This has been quite in depth. It definitely the proud insurance nerd in me is very happy with this conversation, and since I've only marginally touched work comp, I learned a lot. Thank you so much for your time. When this goes live, I will tag both you and the company on the show notes. For the listeners, the website is Work Comp Professionals.
WorkCompProfessionals.com. If, you can also use our shortcut URL at IWCPro.com. That's sometimes a little bit easier for people to remember when you're on the phone or listening to a podcast in your car. IWCPro.com, and my email address is just Kevin at either of those domains, and you can get right in touch with me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.